everyone. I'm Katrina Menzigian, and thank you for joining us today. I wanted to start off by introducing myself. I'm in the Boston area. I am a vice president with Everest Group, and I lead our analyst relations engagement program. I'm joined today by two colleagues, Kriti Gupta and Nisarg Shah, both of whom who happen to be in our India locations. But that reason I bring that up is I'd like all of you, if you can, take a minute to help us know where our audience is from today. So if you could just throw your location into the chat window, that would be really awesome. We'd love knowing that folks from around the world are joining us today. So while you guys all do that, Nisar, can you help introduce yourself and join the conversation?
Sure, thanks, Katrina. So, hey everyone, I'm Nisarg Shah. I'm a practice director with the Healthcare and Life Sciences team. I lead the technology coverage as well as the services coverage in this space. I've been with the firm for over 5 years now, and as Katrina mentioned, based out of Bangalore, India.
Kriti?
Kriti, would you like to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Katrina. Thanks, Nisarg. Hi, everyone. I'm Kriti Gupta, Practice Director at Everest Group. Been with the organization for more than 5 years now. I'm part of our BFS and insurance technology services practice. I lead a lot of our charter on the technology side and happy to be speaking with all of you today.
Great, great. So just a little bit of a layout of the agenda. We are going to do this LinkedIn Live is a little different than the ones we would normally do because our goal with this session is to introduce an area of coverage at Everest Group that a lot of folks may not already be familiar with. So we want to talk about that and give you an overview of that, as well as then explore how that affects our research and the kinds of things we're involved with and the kinds of issues we see affecting these technology markets, and helping answer any questions you might have as well. So that's the general agenda. It's not a webinar, but definitely a conversational session today. So the market, the reason we wanted to cover the topic is because the market knows Everest Group for its legacy in the services space. In fact, we have one of the largest services research practices among any of the research firms in the marketplace. And we provide a 360-degree view of all of the elements that go into services delivery, whether it's the markets, the technologies, the geographies, the pricing, the strategy, as well as the execution and operations. But alongside that services research, we have always done a lot of work in the technology product, the technology space itself, because we've covered the full stack. And in our research, our North Star has always been, how do we bring services and technology to create a more rounded solution for clients? But we've typically been known for publishing on the services side. And so today's session is going to sort of pivot that perspective and focus more on the technology coverage that we've always had, what we publish on, what kind of markets we follow, and maybe shed some light on this space so that you get to know that part of our business a little better than you perhaps already do. So that's kind of that's the main objective, is that we wanted to get our story to you as analyst relations professionals around what do we do in technology and how do we cover it that may be similar or different than other firms. Before we jump into that, though, I wanted to mention that with my two colleagues here today, we have a special offer for those of you that join, and the offer is that there'll be a link that'll go up here in this session, and you can see that posted in the comments section. If you click on that comments window, you can see it there. It just got posted. And what it is that you can have a 45-minute discussion with yourself and another practitioner in your organization with either Kriti or Nisarg on topics related to technology provider space in general, or more specifically, where their deeper expertise is in the technology for banking, financial services, and insurance, or for healthcare and life sciences. conferences. So we're making that available to those that join the call today, and for you to bring in a colleague who you think would also benefit from that conversation. So with all of that setting and context, I wanted to go to the first slide in our presentation. So Everest Group, we like to think of ourselves as having a very strong combination of fact-based research combined with actionable recommendations. So if we look at the iceberg graphic on the left, this may look familiar to you. You know, you have published research at sort of as the point of entry into any kind of relationship with Everest Group, but below that waterline are where all the really juicy, meaty things around analyst inquiries, bespoke engagements and workshops, or even deeper, sort of a custom research project sits. Now, this model might look familiar, and in some ways it is, compared to other research firms, but with where we see a differentiated play for Everest Group is the things that are outlined there on the right-hand side. So one of the things that we do a lot is contextualize the research that is presented here on the left side. And what I mean by that is we slice and dice our views of the market in a much more granular way. And when we engage you, whether it's for an inquiry or a workshop, we begin by doing a full needs assessment and a full inquiry with you of what is it you're trying to accomplish. It's not just answering questions about the data and the information that's in our report, which we will do if you ask us to, but we preface that by understanding what are you trying to answer by even asking this question? What kind of outcome are you looking for? And what is going on in your organization that is prompting these questions? And so based on trying to look at it from your point of view in the world, that allows us to give you more actionable guidance coming out of that inquiry or that workshop, right? Because we work with both the same team of analysts. So Kriti and Nisarg are working not only with the technology providers, but they're working with the technology services companies, as well as the enterprises that engage those products and services. They have to play an impartial view of providing you an unbiased set of guidance for you in your context. So it's the same team of analysts and the same intellectual property and the same set of learnings that then interact with all the stakeholders in the marketplace. That's what the 360-degree approach is about. It's not, so you don't have to go to a different team for the technology and a different team for the services. You've got it all embedded in the same team that can work with you across the board in that regard. And our engagement models are more flexible than we've been told and that we've worked at in terms of the fact that you can engage these analysts directly in partnership with the AR department, but the AR people as well as the practitioners, because we do not have a seat model, we have a universal model that allow you to then bring multiple people with multiple needs and perspectives into the relationship with Everest Group. And so again, it's the same team that's working on all of this that supports you. And whether it's our vice president and our partner on that team or a more junior analyst, they're all available to you. So that's the flexible part. So that's pretty much the extent of the pitch I'm going to do about Everest Group, or at least the positioning of the firm. And I want to move on to the next slide. So this is where we start looking at the technology portfolio specifically. And the reason this is here is not to create an eye chart. That's not our intent here, but to give you an impression of the breadth and the depth of the research that we already do in the software and technology space. Not all of the markets listed here are necessarily ones where we publish a peak matrix assessment, but we do for a lot of them. As you can see, the coverage spans major business process areas like customer experience, finance and accounting, supply chain, HR and talent, as well as sustainability, as well as the technologies that are key to running organizations, applications, digital services, cybersecurity, and so forth. So looking at it from multiple dimensions. And then under the cross-functional, this is where you will find a lot of the underlying technology that cuts across any of these other areas, as well as on their own, having to do with things like process mining, or of course, generative AI is a big focus for all of us. We also cover vertical areas. They're not on this slide because they are the focus for the rest of our conversation. And so we do look deeply at several vertical industries. Healthcare, technology, and life science is one of them. Banking, financial services, and insurance is another. We do a lot in CPG and retail as well. And so I wanted to begin by asking Kriti and Nisarg about how they think of Everest Group's technology coverage. How does the IT team looking at both technology and services affect um, how we view the role and the value proposition of technology, and how that affects how we cover these markets? So, Nisarg, if you want to start, what's your take on that?
Yeah, sure, Katrina. Thanks a lot for that overview. And I completely resonate with the 360 approach, which you mentioned in the previous page, right? We cover not just the services, but also the products across various industries. And I being from HLS, right, you will see that there are large, prominent platforms in that space, which wherein enterprise needs for services and platforms both need to be solved for. So, one is we provide insights which cut across the horizontal as well as the vertical areas, which is very domain nuanced flavor to the kind of research which we get into in the product space. The second is, I think, from a services perspective, it's more about talent, it's more about the capabilities in a particular area. But when it comes to product, it's more about the depth of capabilities, the depth of functionalities, the user experience with respect to the product which needs to be solved for. And we get these insights through our conversations with buyers who actually use the products. And we also talk to them about, what are the integration challenges, how are they deploying it, how fast are they deploying it, right? So the nuances of a product focused conversation versus a service focused conversation is quite different, and it reflects in the kind of research as well as the insights which we bring to the table. So the 360-degree approach as well as the domain nuances which come into the conversations all reflect a product facing tonality, if I may.
Yeah, that's a good point that you're bringing up. Kriti, if you can comment on this, but the question that came up in my mind, and it came up from this art's comments, but I'm gonna pitch it to you. Um, do you find, oh, I'm sorry, is there an echo? Do you find that this also impacts your ability to look at the partnering element of how technology providers partner, and what is it about our view about partnering that might be interesting or unique?
Sure, Katrina, and thanks for that question. So it is all very dynamic, is what I would say. And adding to what Nisarg mentioned, since we are at this unique vantage point in the entire ecosystem, we are speaking to buyers of these technology and services, and then we are speaking to the technology providers, and then we're also speaking to the service provider. I would say for me, all of it becomes very real because I'm not in just one specific area, I'm speaking to one stakeholder. And if I can take an example, so just yesterday I was speaking to one of the service provider global leaders, right? And we were discussing one of the core technology areas in the PFS space. And given the conversations I have been having with the core tech providers, I could see it from a very different perspective. And yes, it does have a lot of impact on how we see a lot of these technology providers are looking at partners as well, right? Because at the end of the day, it is all about how the entire ecosystem can come together and enable a successful, be it a digital transformation or a tech transformation for an end enterprise. And for that, they need both the tech providers and their partners to come together. So yes, I agree, having that unique insight and unique take on what makes a core tech provider successful in their area of expertise, and also what is it from a service provider lens, what they're looking for in a partner, how can they make that partnership successful. I think looking at it from these two unique aspects does really help us, and we can share back those insights to the market.
Yeah. So in that context, this is my last question before we move on to the deeper dive in each of your respective areas. Give us an idea, if you can, of who are the stakeholders within a technology company that you are typically interacting with? Is it more on the marketing side? Is it product development? Is it revenue generation? Is it the actual product development side? Is it the partnering side? Like, who do you interact with as you cover these technology providers?
Sure. So, if I can add to that, Katrina, I think we speak to a broad variety of stakeholders at the technology provider stakeholder groups, right? So and as you rightly mentioned, we definitely speak to the CMOs and their entire marketing organization as they think about how to have a brand evangelization in place, a market evangelization strategy in place. We also speak to a lot of the product heads as they come up with new feature functionalities. They want to brief us, they want to take our opinions onto it. How is this resonating? Is this in line with what the enterprises are expecting? And also, we speak to a lot of the strategy heads who look at the overall direction of where the product is heading, let's say 5 years, 10 years into the future. What is the art of possible? What could happen? So I think we speak to a lot of these stakeholders, right, Nisarg?
We do, yes. So it is a broad spectrum, right? Each with their own requirements, if I may. So all our insights have to be accordingly contextualized to their needs. So, for example, a head of marketing or a CMO might be interested in what's my messaging and is it accurate? Is it on point? Is it aligned to the needs of, say, an HLS organization, etc.? Similarly, if we're speaking to a head of product, right? Product development, what are the needs for tomorrow which I need to build for today, right? Are the functionalities in my current solution enough or adequate to meet the needs of the organizations? And I think when it comes to the partner ecosystem as well, right? Some of the large platform providers have a vast partner ecosystem too. So it could be system integrators, it could be data partners, it could be a couple of other partners. So their needs revolve more around how can I think about increasing my depth of coverage in certain geographies and some of those nuances. So and I think the list goes on and on. We also speak to product heads for a very small function to even a very large product in itself, right? So it's a vast majority of, say, stakeholders from depth and breadth both.
Okay, that's what that's what's needed, right? To do an adequate contextualize. I like that you remembered, you reminded me of that contextual word, Nisarg. So I think that verticalization allows a lot of that contextualization to happen, right? Because that's the direction where everybody's going to. And even the technology providers, they start by developing a technology, but then oftentimes go to market initially by vertical, trying to drive a business outcome for their clients. So time to move on to the conversations related specifically to the vertical industries. I believe we're going to BFSI first, if I'm not mistaken. If we could get the next slide up. What I wanted to, I'm going to hand this over to Kriti, but I just wanted to point out that we do research in each one of these technology areas in BFS and in insurance. And there are individual reports, there's individual practice area, there's individual peak matrix assessments. Kriti will tell you all of it, but there's quite a bit here and very focused and targeted. So take it away, Kriti.
Thanks, Katrina. So I know the slide can be slightly text heavy because there are a lot of these areas we cover from an industry lens within BFS and insurance. So I'll try to make this and break this down into two pieces, right? So that it is easier to consume as well. If I look at broadly from a banking and financial services industry, and if I look at how the market is shaping up, what are the enterprise priorities? So at one end, there is this high demand to have very personalized customer experience. At the other end, there is enterprises have this pressing questions: can I minimize my costs? And then it is all about, can I reduce the legacy debt that I have? So this trifecta of challenges, I think, is what is in front of these BFS enterprises today. And I know you can't answer one without impacting the other two. So what we are trying to also address via our research is, we are taking a very line of business lens. So if I look at our research, we are going deep into consumer lending as an area, which is where you see consumer loan origination systems. We are also addressing the experience bit, wherein we go deep onto the DXP side for wealth management and the overall core wealth management piece. And again, from a line of business perspective, we're also looking at core banking systems and core payment tech systems. And at the same time, we're also looking at the pieces around, okay, what can help reduce the legacy debt for these enterprises? How can technology help solve for some of these pressing needs? So we're also looking at areas like low code, no code. And yes, within BFS, you can never leave regulations and a lot of these activities behind. So we do have good coverage on the financial crime and compliance side, even trade life cycle management. So all these items that you see on our slide here, we have peak matrix assessments, product peak matrix assessments in most of these areas. So consumer lending, wealth management, this entire piece around core banking, right? So we do have a deep coverage into all of it, and that's what we are trying to answer from our research as well. How can technology help solve for these problems, and who are these technology providers that can answer this question for the enterprises today? And if I look at insurance side of the house, right? I mean, insurance, if you look at it, everywhere there is this dynamic around, can I do real time risk pricing? Can I sell experiences through products? And can I even digitize the entire insurance distribution model? So a lot of these pressing questions are in front of the insurers today. And again, via our research, we are looking at answering some of these pieces through our dedicated and focused research on the technology platforms within insurance, be it digital insurance claims or even the retirement administration platforms, even low code platforms in insurance. We have a dedicated product speak matrix around it. Similarly, on the group life side and even DXP in insurance, we are going very deep into these areas and looking at who are the leading technology providers in the space, and can they help solve the problems of today. So I think, just in a nutshell, this is how we are looking at BFS and insurance coverage at Everest.
Okay, sorry. So, question, everybody loves to hear their name and their competitors' names. So, I guess that's one piece we could have added to our slides here is, give us a flavor of, you talked about consumer lending, you talked about retirement, you talked about all these other spaces, claims. Can you give us an example of the sets of providers that perhaps are especially interesting, or a lot of dynamic things happening with, or that you know you're building out your coverage of?
Sure, Katrina. So we've worked with multiple of these. I think, in fact, we helped one leading fintech sort out its system integrator partnership strategy. We also helped define a BFSI product strategy, and I think that's the one I want to double click on. So there's this leading workflow technology provider out there in the market, and it wanted to refine its vertical strategy on the BFS and insurance side. So that is where they needed and help on the research side and the strategy formulation side, right? So that is where we stepped in. We identified the total market opportunity from an overall workflow systems market size. What is the BFS and insurance part of it? We did a very holistic line of business opportunity assessment. So it was not just BFS or insurance. We went even deeper within BFS and insurance. So within BFS, we looked at lending, we looked at payments, we looked at core banking. Similarly, on the insurance side, we look at LNA and PNC, and we gave them a very neat methodology that how can you study the workflow management opportunity, and hey, these are the white spaces in the market, and this is where you go, and this is where you help refine the current offering of your product and take it to market, because this is what enterprises need. This is the white space, and this is where, hey, competition is lacking in the piece. So I think that is one very interesting piece of research we did, and it's very close to me, because we really went deep in this area and helped client formulate the strategy into the sub verticals within BFSI.
Yeah, that sounds like it could drive a lot of sort of actionable outcomes. So that's sounds like it must have been an interesting and engaged process. So in doing that work, just out of curiosity, um, who were some of the stakeholders at that client organization you were working with? And we have an audience of analyst relations folks here, right? So what role did that relationship, that stakeholder play in this engagement that you were just talking about? Um, Anything you can share to help our audience sort of visualize how the project came about, what role they can play in building a project like this, who should they be um, informing about what they've heard today, that kind of stuff.
Sure, Katrina. And I think that's a great question because what at least I have realized in all these years of working with a lot of the technology provider organizations is there is not one stakeholder group that is primarily involved in such exercises, right? It's an entire ecosystem that comes together. So in this exercise that I just spoke about, we had the product strategy head always, right? So because the product strategy head helped us understand where the product is today, and the research that we shared, the insights we shared, helped to visualize where they can be tomorrow. We also had stakeholders from the revenue generation team, the demand generation team also, because that is where they could tell us where the problem was getting real for them as they took their offering to the end clients, right? So I think we worked equally with both the sides of the house. And yes, the entire I think the AR stakeholder group is what helped us orchestrate this entire piece together, because it was not one stakeholder group we interacted with. The helping us navigate, helping us understand who are these right stakeholders we should be speaking to, and even within a stakeholder group, who's the right person with the right set of data points and expertise who can guide us on this, who can be the thought partner on this. So I think a lot of orchestration bit is where we received a lot of support from the AR audience.
Okay, sounds good. I'm going to give you a break. We'll come back to chatting about BFSI, but maybe we can bring Nisarg and the life sciences team into the conversation. We do have a slide for that. Thank you. And Nisarg, I'm going to you got to hear the questions I asked Kriti, so I'll probably ask the same ones of you. The one thing that I would want you to mention as well is sort of what are the challenges that you're seeing coming up in these two very big, dynamic, high growth spaces. So they're great that they're all growing, but what are the challenges, maybe from a technology standpoint, that some of these entities are facing? Um, and how are we looking at our own research agenda and our research portfolio to try to, to tackle that?
Sure, Katrina. So I think healthcare, life sciences are quite dynamic in their own ways, right? COVID proved that an industry which say is usually trying to release a drug after 7 to 8 years of testing, probably even more, can do so in record pace of say 1.5 years. But I think some of the technological elements which are required to truly enable that, right, also need to keep pace with the changing needs of the client. So, when we usually speak to a lot of the healthcare, life sciences enterprises, the common challenges which we usually hear is that some of the technology products which are out there in the market are not custom built for, say, a healthcare or life sciences organization. So, consider, say, the manufacturing setup which a pharma company might need, right? The technological elements can very well be sold to them, which are used for, say, a typical CPG organization, if I may. So that contextualization is required, and that's what they're looking for from a lot of these product providers. The second is there are a lot of patients in this side of the business, right? And in order to retain or engage these patients, the kind of user experience which is required to consistently enable them to share feedback, share data, is the infrastructure required for that is supposed to be adaptive. It's supposed to be a great UX compared to, say, the likes of Instagram, Facebook, etc. Right? But that's where we see a lot of delta, which a lot of the platform providers are still trying to reduce. And I think the third one is there is a lot of tech sprawl. So for almost every function, you will have a set of 7 to 8, probably more, small platforms which are trying to do their own work, right? But ultimately, for a pharma organization or healthcare organization, when it comes to the bigger picture, they're trying to work with almost hundreds of small platforms or products. All of that, I think, is now being trying to integrate into one large platform. And that's the trend we see a lot of these platforms trying to go towards, right? So these are the three big problems we see the providers trying to solve for. And these are, what you see on this page, right, are the big products we see trying to reinvent the market, if I may, right? So if I was to talk about the healthcare side of the house, how member engagement platforms put more power to a potential subscriber of a policy document, right? Enable him or her to look at how what are the features of the policy, how they can access it, and so on and so forth. Similarly, when it comes to patient engagement platforms or care management platforms, getting involved right from treatment of a disease till treatment has been delivered. Revenue cycle management platforms, wherein you're trying to reduce the amount of fraud, waste, abuse, which usually happens with respect to, say, claims management between a payer and a provider, right? And if you think about the life sciences side of the ecosystem, how platforms can improve engagement between healthcare practitioners and patients, right? When a farmer tries to launch a new drug, it's more about how much information is out there for a physician to make a confident decision about prescribing the new drug versus one which already exists in the market, right? And I think there are a couple of other platforms as well, right? Clinical development platforms, decentralized clinical trial platforms, which bring together a lot of smaller solutions into a larger suite so that they can reduce the total cost of ownership, offer a better experience to the various stakeholders in the pharma or medical device organizations, and ultimately give better insights which are more actionable and more real time in nature, if I may.
Hmm. So Nisarg, if I were to if I were to oh, by the way, folks, just so you know, there is a comment section, and if you have questions while we're talking, feel free to put them in there. We're monitoring it, and we'll do our best to respond to you while we're in the conversation. But Nisarg, what I was going to ask is though, um, if you were to have an audience of a handful of tech executives right now who are targeting healthcare and life sciences, or even better yet, you have a small group of strategic thinkers at a particular, you're at that board meeting. What do you think are the blind spots? What do you think are the areas where technology vendors, and of course, we've talked about a wide range of technology vendors, so pick one that you think is especially relevant. And what is the blind spot? What is the challenge that is still not being adequately addressed, that's a chronic pain point in the market today, or an
Sure.
opportunity that is maybe not being adequately addressed?
Sure. So I think one area which has definitely picked up quite a lot since the advent of AI, Gen AI, is the access to information and access to insights, right? So if I was to pick an area, say clinical data and analytics platforms, traditionally the pharma medical device organizations used to have a data lake, right? And that was where all the data used to get dumped. Now they had to create customized solutions to operate on that data, analyze the data, transform the data into a format which could be regulatory compliant, and then share it ahead with, say, regulators like FDA, EMA, etc. Now, I think because every company is trying to customize their own suite of solutions, products, etc., there is a very high spend which goes into into the same, right? Plus, they have to hire service providers to continuously maintain, monitor, upgrade those solutions. And now, I think since the past few years, we are seeing a new category of platforms evolve, which are the clinical data and analytics platforms. So think about a platform which is hosted on your environment, which can transform your data, which can process your data, which can give you tailored insights based on the domain specific insights which you're actually looking for, which traditionally was not there in the environment before, because a lot of the data management platforms were industry agnostic to some extent. So think about insights which are domain focused, such as where is the clinical trial right now, how fast is it recruiting, are my patients being enrolled on time, so on and so forth. Um, Add to that a generative AI layer. So think about the ability to redact or process an image, or give insights about when's the best time to reach out to a patient, create document which a patient may be able to ingest as in a very simple way. All of those are areas which are unique, which are innovative, and where we see a lot of such platforms trying to make a name for themselves in the market, if I may. And to be honest, I think as of today, it's almost a $1 billion market for a very niche industry. So the industry I'm talking about is not HLS, not life sciences, not pharma, but clinical development, right? So you can imagine the market size of the TAM as well as the potential growth rate for a couple of other value chains as well. For example, customer engagement platforms and sales and marketing, for example. So these are areas which keep mushrooming and which we are, always trying to be on top of, if I may.
Yeah. Okay. So, real quick question. So that was helpful to understand, but leads me to ask the question of, does the particular scenario of maybe a custom engagement that you've done with a client where you've had to break things down in detail and map them out, in the access to data space or any other space that you're focused on, what did that look like? And
Yeah.
how did you work with the client? What were the kinds of questions they were grappling with? What did we end up delivering?
Sure. So we actually did one large engagement with a platform provider focused on this space, right? So the problem statement was, how do we grow in the next 5 years? Where should we grow, right? So we did a market assessment in terms of what's the current TAM, how fast will it grow in the next 5 years. We also did a product facing assessment of their own internal products and benchmarked it to some of the leaders in the industry. Here's where you stand, here's what you need to do different in order to differentiate yourself versus other peers in the space. We also did a voice of customer analysis. So that's where we spoke to some of their existing clients, understood what their pain points were, and passed on that feedback to the product team as well, in terms of here's what's working well for you, but here's where you need to iron out in terms of the pain points for your customers or users, so as to give a very fine-tuned product. And finally, we tied all of these into actionable recommendations. And the folks who we were working with were actually the CEO and the head of product for the organization. So you can imagine how strategic and important this was for them. So it actually boiled down a lot of different mini size engagements into one large engagement, if I may.
Yeah, yeah, it sounds like you tackled a pretty comprehensive project. And how large, just out of curiosity, how many people did we put on that project? Do you have a recollection?
Internally from Everest Group?
Yeah, I mean, I imagine that we pulled in different people at different phases. I mean, this is structured like a typical strategy consulting project that you would have at other firms, other, strategy firms.
So it was presently just Everest Group who orchestrated it in terms of the end-to-end research, but we had the product provider and Everest Group closely coordinating and the clients of the product provider. right? And in terms of who was involved from Everest Group's end, of course, the client director was closely involved. The couple of partners are involved, and the lead analyst for that particular areas were also involved. So I think
Mm,
it was almost a 8 to 9 member team, if I may, right?
yeah,
Working
yeah,
across a period of a couple of months.
yeah. Pretty intense experience. Okay, so wanted to remind folks that if you've heard things today that piqued your interest, you do have the opportunity to click on that CTA link, which we'll put up again in the comments window, and to learn more about any of the things that you heard from Kriti or Nisarg, or to kind of explore something that's going on in your organization that you'd like to get their take on. Um, Wanted to give you an idea of how, we talked a little bit about how we engage on these custom projects. If we could put up the next slide, I wanted to share a framework that we use when we go to market. And then I want to test this with both Nisarg and Kriti. So, we have these the way Everest Group engages the market is along two main models, entry points, shall we say. One is the configurable annual membership, which has the items listed here. And as I mentioned in our opening slide, even these things like your inquiries or your strategic interactions or your market briefings, they're all very contextualized in response to where you are in the market, the questions that are interesting for you. They're not a boilerplate answer that we put out to every one of the clients of the program or when anybody calls for an inquiry. There's work put into it, there's preparation put into it, and we try to make it as targeted to your interests as possible. But then we have these contextualized and customized research initiatives, and you've been hearing about these from my colleagues. Another way to think about these is, we try to focus on issues related to strategy. Where do I compete? How do I compete? What's my opportunity? Marketing, which is how do we let the world know about the wonderful things that we're doing and help refine our value proposition and our thought leadership and get that awareness out there. And then in the world of sales, right? How do we position for better competitiveness? Who is our competition? How is that changing? What can you tell me about the accounts that I'm interested in? What can you tell me about how competitive my proposals and my offerings are in how I'm engaging my client? And of course, that includes not only the solution you're proposing, but the price points involved with those solutions. So all of that falls into preparing your sales force and your sales team to be touching on the topics and the concerns that the clients have. All of that is all part of what we do in custom. But I wanted to ask Kriti and Nisarg, if you were to look at this break between memberships and custom and think about your client portfolios in BFSI and healthcare life sciences, how do we engage those markets? Are they typically membership clients? Are they typically custom clients? Like, what kind of interests do they have in research?
Sure. So I can probably start, and Nisar, you can add your perspectives as well. So, Katrina, quite an interesting question. And if I look at how does the engagement fare across our membership and our a lot of our bespoke contextualized research, as we are calling it, I would say it's a healthy mix of two. If I look at BFS and insurance at the moment, it's a healthy mix of two, because think of our configurable annual memberships as a steady stream of analyst insights, analyst perspectives that come to you year round, right? You have these peak matrix assessments in these focus areas. You have access to the analyst team available to bounce off ideas, to share any new latest development on the product side, right? So and you have these quarterly connects, which you can just do a check-in and gather perspectives on the market, right, and hear from us what we are seeing in the space. So the membership bit is, I would call it, as a steady stream of insight that comes to you year round. The other piece, which is more about customized and more contextual, I think oftentimes I have seen it stems from oftentimes, not always, oftentimes it stems from a lot of our membership pieces, right? So it could be an inquiry construct that starts as a discussion, and then it is like, okay, we need something more broad, we need something that is more in our context. Or it could be that, hey, I want to do this in this new market, and I want to understand more about this competitive segment. Is this something you can help me with? Or I need to refine my value proposition and messaging. So I would say a lot of on what the needs of that technology provider stakeholder group is at that moment. The engagement model falls across the two buckets, but at the moment I see it as a healthy mix of two. Nisar, what do you say about it?
Yeah, I agree. When it comes to membership, it's more about helping clients with respect to the research we've published in the technology provider space, debriefs on the various assessments we might have launched, featuring them or some of their competitors. It could also be access to analysts, and there are unlimited analyst inquiries as well, which could be about discussing what are our perspectives on the market with respect to regulation or any new announcements which could be impacting the market or so on and so forth. I think when it comes to custom engagements, they're more bespoke. They're one is to one, right? Not one is to many. So it's there where we take a very heavily contextualized approach and a stakeholder specific approach, wherein the insights could range from here's what we know, but based on our research, here's what it means for you. And oftentimes, custom research engagements will not stick to L1 or L2 level insights, but will bubble down into L3 and L4 level insights as well, which will mean that we get an understanding about the product provider's coverage of the product. And we also are able to talk to them about functionality specific nuances as well. Then I think when it comes to strategic discussion, it's more about where we believe they're currently playing and where they could be playing, right? And then there's also the perspective about messaging. So how they're messaging themselves, how their peers message themselves, and what really resonates with the client. So custom research engagements, as you know, was previously projected on that page, right? Cut across strategy, sales, marketing, across a lot of areas and a lot of stakeholders, and they are custom designed to solve for a very specific problem statement or a couple of problem statements which are combined together to serve the need of a specific client. Membership, on the other hand, is what we've published. Here's what we know. Here's what the trends are. Here's what the sourcing priorities are. And here's where the market seems to be moving towards. But it's not, we can contextualize it to a client, but in order to get to L3, L4 level insights, it's much more in the custom research and pragmatic territory, if I may.
Yeah, yeah, that's all. That sounds typical. I just was curious if, given the maturity of markets, the maturity of technology vendors, if one over the other seems to come up in your conversations more and more these days. Um, any quick thoughts on that? Like, do you find memberships are more um, of an entry point versus custom, or any way to think about your portfolio?
Yeah, I think memberships are definitely an entry point for us, right? Because product providers want to understand the competitive landscape, where they're positioned on a particular area, right? And how their competitors seem to be evolving, which is a very good use case from a membership standpoint. They also may have various product launches which they want to stress test with us in terms of, what do you think about this? Do you think it'll solve the needs for a particular enterprise or not, right? So of more often than not, it's it's usually the membership conversations which start off first, and then they may evolve into a custom research
Mhm.
engagement. But it depends on where the product provider is, where they stand, and what are their priorities.
Okay, great. Okay, folks. I mean, this has been a really interesting conversation. It hopefully answered any questions that our audience has. If you have any more questions, feel free to use the comment section. Feel free to use the CTA, the the sort of the offer that we have for you. That's our internal logo. So use the opportunity you have to talk more privately with Kriti or Nisarg. You can click on that link, and it will walk you through a whole process for getting that time booked. One thing you may want to do, I know a lot of analyst relations folks use these tools. So on our website, everestgrp.com, if you look on that page, we have access reports, access research button on the right-hand side. And if you click on that, that takes you to our reports portal. Right there on the right-hand side of that page is another button. So it's really two buttons. That's that is our RFI agenda. So we make that publicly available to the market for you to be able to see the kinds of spaces and markets that we're going to be conducting RFIs on for building future research. And you can search that and filter it by whatever topic you're interested in. And that will give you an idea if you have a topic that you're trying to either promote your firm in or want to know if we cover. That's a third way, other than reaching out to us directly. That's a third way you could go in and see what's on our research agenda. So with that, wanted to just give Kriti or Nisarg a last chance to any comments, any thoughts about the work that you're doing and what you have, maybe what you have coming up next. Are there certain hot topics that you've got on the research agenda for the summer? Because we are coming into summer here in North America, and I guess most parts of the Western Hemisphere. Anyway, and if you have any things you want to put on folks' radar screens before we sign off.
I can start, right? So, of course, as analysts, we're asked a lot of questions about generative AI. We even launched a small report last year in terms of the potential, the impact. We followed it up with a survey in terms of real-time insights, and are now publishing a white paper around the real-time impact and the potential deployment of generative AI across life sciences. I think that should hit the market in a few weeks. And then there are a few assessments which we are refreshing. There are large spend areas in the product categories focused on cloud data platforms for healthcare. They're focused on the clinical data and analytic platforms. And what we'll also do is there are very smaller areas like risk-based quality management. These are not platforms in themselves, but they're smaller products. So we'll also explore how that interfaces with, say, life sciences in a way, right? But I think there's a huge industry debate in life sciences around two big product providers, a partnership divorce. So how will pharma enterprises really make the switch from one product provider versus another? How will the dynamics change? It's actually the Viva Salesforce divorce, and we have a lot of commentary around that as well. So in case you're interested in that, our analysts can also speak to you around this. But Kriti, anything from you?
Sure, Nisarg. So I like the layering from the BFS and insurance side. So we do have some interesting pieces of research that are already ongoing, and I think few of you on the call and few of you who watch it later, we are already in touch with you. So the core wealth management products piece and the consumer loan origination systems piece on the BFS side, right? On the insurance side, we have the assessments coming up, assessing the core insurance platforms as well. I think these are few pieces that you will hear from us a lot about. Also, an interesting piece of research that we are coming up with, and it's the first time we are doing it, is the top 50 research, which is like a list of the top 50 providers in the area we're talking about, right? So we are doing these pieces of research for LNA top 50 providers, right? PNC top 50 providers. Similarly, on the banking side of the house, we have core banking top 50, payments top 50. So I think a lot of pieces of research coming out talking about the core platforms on the BFS and insurance side, right? So you'll hear from us, and you'll hear from most of the analyst team as well in the coming, I would say, next 8 to 10 weeks. And to just top it off, I want to reiterate the point that Katrina had mentioned, right? I think the unique vantage point we have in the ecosystem, the 360-degree view. So it's not just us about looking at, hey, which is the best tech provider with the best in class feature functionality, or hey, which is the best service provider who can do an amazing SI work or partnership work, or who is that enterprise with that 2030 2050 technology vision, right? It's about all of them coming together to make it right, and we are in that unique position to help you with the insights across all the three buckets. So that's the piece I want to leave you on with.
Yeah, you bring up something, your comment made me think of something. You can have the best technology in the world with the coolest functionality, and if it doesn't get into the client environment in a way that truly enables them to be productive and to truly reach the outcome they're looking for, and there's so many things that go into that that's beyond the functionality of your software. How ready is the organization? How do you implement it? How do you manage it on an ongoing basis? How's the change management? How's the training? All those pieces. You do need a 360 view in order to create the end goal of a satisfied client. So thank you for reminding me of that. Okay, so I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today. This video will, of course, be available on our website and on LinkedIn. Sorry, and we hope that you can share it with your colleagues. And for those who couldn't join today, you have the opportunity to talk to our team afterwards and bring in some of those colleagues. And thank you very much to Kriti and Nisarg, and have a great day, everybody, or great evening.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Katrina.
everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.